Hi there! Welcome to Ancestral Recall. This is a Magic web series that explores the depths of 20 years of Magic's past and explains it for newer players. I'm your host, Eli Kaplan. We're going to look at what Standard was like at the time, limited experiences, flavor, what cards you should consider including in your cubes and commander decks, as well as maybe other formats. Today's story, Odyssey. Overview! Odyssey is the first set of its block, released in fall 2001. While the name suggests Greek origins, that isn't the case. The story of Odyssey deals with the previously undiscussed section of Dominaria, Oteria. The settings told the story of Kamal, a wandering, freedom-loving warrior, in red, who finds himself inexorably drawn into conflict with a shadowy cabal, a cabal of slavers, of merchants, and corrupt officials who lure thousands into the stands to watch gladiators fight to the death in brutal bouts. All sides seek the Mirari, a powerful MacGuffin that, it's supposed to make your dreams reality, but, standard MacGuffin rules, it corrupts all it touches. Mechanics! I'm not talking about the guys from Card Talk. Odyssey had two major mechanics that were the linchpin of the set, Threshold and Flashback. Flashback's the easiest to talk about because every flashback card had a little grave icon next to its name. Many recent players should be familiar with it due to its inclusion in Innistrad. Odyssey's flashback costs were strictly same color, however, and since this was the first time for the mechanic to get to the dance, development put a lot of the costs rather high. Check out Fervent Denial. 5 mana for a counterspell to start, and 7 mana to flash it back? I understand that Wizards was a little gun-shy after seeing Forbid dominate Standard and Tempest, so they pushed the spell's cost to astronomical heights. Fog, on the other hand, got a 2-shot jolt with Moment's Peace. This particular combination of voiding 2 attack steps with 1 spell was format warping later on. Flashback gave you cards with built-in card advantage, allowing you to use them twice. That's pretty snazzy. That other mechanic? Threshold. It turned creatures into bigger creatures. It turned spells into backbreakers. Before transform cards, before flip cards, before level up, there was Threshold. And all it took to get Threshold was to have 7 cards in your graveyard. Nomad Decoy, the set's obligatory tapper, goes from tapping 1 guy to tapping 2. Mystic Enforcer goes from a French vanilla 3/3 to a 6/6 flyer for 4 mana. Wow. Threshold was a big deal, especially in Limited. What was quirky and unusual about Odyssey block? Well, for one thing, Odyssey decided to take the regular creature mix and get rid of many of the staples. There was only one merfolk in Odyssey block, Ambassador Liquatus. There were no goblins, no elves. Wizards claimed that they wanted to shake things up to make the creature mix fresh. But the real reason that they did that, they knew that the next block, Onslaught block, had a heavy tribal theme, and so they wanted to lay off some of the fan favorites so that Standard wouldn't be warped. No elves, no goblins, virtually no merfolk, so there was a gap, there was a hole. Wizards had to substitute it with something. White and blue got the Aven, small flyers that could be home on Thanagar. Red got a number of ugly beasts, and dwarves. Well, looking at dwarves, this was the first serious set since Fallen Empires that Wizards had printed a significant number of dwarves. They even got their own lord. Blue got down deep into the ocean and came out with the cephalids, a weird shellfish-like semi-humanoid race that make me worry about mercury poisoning. Black got a bunch of ugly horrors and minions. Minions! The ostensible reason for the swap is that Oteria had a different biosphere, but when they used the same setting for Onslaught and brought back all the regular suspects, it's clear that the swap was for standard playable mechanical reasons. Oh, and green? Green always has a broad mix of creature types, but this set gave the forests squirrels. Chattering squirrels, called by druids, found in mobs or in nests, or occasionally you get a real beast. An 8/8 squirrel, for crying out loud! At least it didn't have trample. The blame for this situation or, the credit, is squarely on the head of Mark Rosewater and no other. Green also got the insectoid Nantico, who I found just incredibly creepy. When I see pictures of stick insects, ugh. Standout cards. Odyssey wasn't that powerful compared to Saga or Tempest, but it definitely had a ton of highlights. Let's start off with the cycles, shall we? At Common, we had the Bursts, spells which cared about the number of copies with the same name in all graveyards. Flame Burst did 2 damage, plus 1 for each in the yard. Muscle Burst was Giant Growth, plus 1 for each in the yard, and also counted Diligent Farmhand, which was this block's analog of Sakura Tribe Elder. Neat. The most powerful and constructed, however, was Ether Burst, which turned into late-game Cyclonic Rifts. 2 mana for bouncing 3 or 4 or sometimes 6 guys. That's a big deal. The black one, Mind Burst, and the white one, Life Burst, rarely got played. We also had a common cycle of dogs. Who let the dogs out? Odyssey. That's who. This one went to the thesaurus, though, as instead of a cycle just named Hounds, which is the standard magic term for dogs, we got a hound, a whelp, a cur, a mongrel, and how creative, a dog. These 2/2s for 2 mana were solid aggressors. Well, okay, except the blue one. He kept needing constant prodding, or casting, to stay in the fights. But we'll come back to this cycle. Odyssey gave the Magic world more Atogs than ever before. Atogs, an anagram of goats, eat things, and in a set where players can gain great utility from having things in the graveyard, they're a good fit. This set had allied color Atogs. The rare Atog, Atog, just 8 Atogs. It was the second Wooburg card printed since Sliver Queen, and people were underwhelmed by it. It failed to match the expectations that Sliver Queen had set. Atog's activated ability was narrow, and it was only a 5/5 to Sliver Queen's 7/7. Years later, we found out that, this card was pushed from an unset. But the hands-down winner in the Atog clan was Psychotog. This deck was the favorite football to be kicked around in blue-black mirror matchups. Psychotog was everywhere. You could discard a card to give it a virtual +1.5/+1.5, and every other spell you used added to a potential lethal strike. Psychotog was immune to most black removal spells, but not Innocent Blood, which was often sandbagged in case of Upheaval. Upheaval, Psychotog's best partner, was an utterly broken reset button, making everyone pick up their lands as well as their dudes. I actually played Psychotog in Upheaval at the Odyssey pre-release in a sealed deck, and I actually got it to work once. I wish for the next couple of weeks I had remembered that strategy as I kept screwing around with other control builds with white. And just to be clear, Upheaval is not something I endorse in group games. It's not a fun cube card either, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Upheaval in discussing this set. It's a landmark card that needs to be discussed. Psychotog, now there's a card that should find a home in cubes, that's for certain. As soon as he hits the table, the tension starts ratcheting up. This set had one of the absolute best invitational cards ever, John Finkel's Shadow Mage Infiltrator. This card was exactly what a control deck wanted in a 3-drop, an evasive guy that drew you cards. Finkel would have been the most popular gold card in the set, if not for the fact that people using that other 1UB card in the set as a proxy figured out that Psychotog was in many ways superior. I myself engaged in proxying Finkel with Psychotog and realized that when you're curating the board state very carefully, Psychotog just wins. Finkel just builds up resources over time. But let's get back to the cycles. There's an early card from Torment's Possessed cycle, Repentant Vampire. When enough bodies are in your graveyard, he turns from black to white and gains the power to kill black creatures. To ask the question of Planescape Torment, what can change the nature of a man? The answer is regret. Torment's Possessed Creature cycle gets the ability at Threshold to kill creatures of its original color. And this was a cool preview card, a great inclusion. The set had 3 cycles of lands. The commons, oh man, the commons were incredibly horrible in comparison to Lorwyn's Vivid Lands. These lands came into play tapped, made 1 color of mana, or you could sacrifice them for 1 of any color. Ugh. The uncommons tap for colored mana and force you to take a point of damage, but when you're at threshold, you could sacrifice them for some kind of effect. The most popular over the years has been Barbarian Ring, acting as just 1 more shock in red decks, but my favorite of the bunch is Cephalid Colosseum, which filters your hands into great spells and gives your Psychotog a nice meal. One time I was playing a mirror match, I had a Psychotog out, my opponent had a Psychotog out, and it turned into a staring contest. We were politely waiting for each other, seeing who would twitch first. When my opponent was down to 2 cards in his library, I sacrificed the Colosseum and made him draw 3. That's the kind of sneakiness I approve of. The rare cycle, the filter lands, allow you to tap it and pay 1 colorless to get an allied pair of mana. Nothing fancy, and far less flexible than Shadowmoor's filter lands, but at least they would work with any color to pay for them, and they didn't automatically cause you damage, unlike the pain lands that were rampant in Standard. On their own, the filter lands didn't even tap for mana, so if you had an opening hand with 3 of them, well, then you're boned. White got a kind of replacement for Circle of Protection with the Spheres. The Sphere enchantments prevented 2 damage to you from any individual source of the appropriate color without any mana cost. So if you have problems with tokens in Commander, maybe consider a Sphere of the appropriate color in your EDH deck. I don't care for them in Cube, though. Like the Atogs, there was another cycle of old creatures come back in a color cycle, the Lurgoyfs. Lurgoyfs, another graveyard-focused creature type. Each of these focused on 1 particular creature type, and I have to tell you, I play a lot of Momir Basic on Magic Online, so I see Cognivores pop up occasionally at the 8-drop spot. I hate Cognivores. Terravore is played in a few Legacy decks, but it's definitely one of the least useful ones. The one that got some play in Standard was Mortivore, which was just like the original Lurgoyf, except better templated in terms of color pie, and he could regenerate. Mortivore was at his best in slow, controlling black builds, which, when we get to the Pro Tour Osaka decks, you'll see a lot of these. My biggest problem with this cycle is simple. There isn't any flavor text. Yes, I know. Different setting, and Hans of Hans Run can't be in the setting. But you know what? Who cares about time or space or continuity when you can have funny things? Wasted chances. Karmic Justice. Okay, those of you who have watched my previous videos know that I tend to like passive-aggressive cards. If there's a way to make my opponents feel bad about destroying my stuff, I want to go there in Commander. It never worked that well in Standard at the time, but Karmic Justice is the first in this small but relevant series of Share the Pain enchantments in White that are popular in Commander. Okay, what's the most useless rare in the set? Hands down, this one's easy. Mudhole. If you were opening Mudhole in a PTQ or Grand Prix Trial sealed event at the time, it's like a kick to the gut. A rare with so much potential, with the ability to break games open, and you get Mudhole. Seeing this card was like a kick in the pants, not just a kick in the gut. And as a player who likes to experiment, I wanted to try this out to see if there was some kind of application, but it was not to be. Honestly, I think they should have added the text, draw a card on it. And even then, Mudhole would still stink. Tarnished Citadel. Okay, story time. In 2002, I got on the Shinkansen, the Japanese bullet train, to go from my turf away from home, Nagoya, Japan, to attend Osaka's Pro Tour in 2002. When I was there, I did some side drafts, and I helped out the coverage people by putting in the deck lists. It was early in the afternoon of day 2, and I put in about 100 or so of the 280 plus deck lists into Microsoft Excel. At some point, I jumped up in my chair, and I said, I know who's going to win the Pro Tour! I went around and told people like Josh Bennett and whoever else would listen that I knew who was going to win. Now, In Pro Tour Osaka, the two dominant archetypes of block constructed with Odyssey and Torment legal were Blue-Green Madness and Mono Black, and Ken D. Ho had solved the primary problem that Blue-Green Madness faced. Without any sort of land that produced both colors, the mana was rough, and Ken Ho was willing to pay 3 life and get more flexibility with Tarnished Citadel. It might have hurt like hell, but that flexibility is what got him the win at the Pro Tour. I was bummed that I never got credit for this. Yeah, I know, Ken Ho, he's the guy who thought of it. He gets the lion's share of the credit, but I was the first guy on the coverage team to know this. Speaking of big tournaments, I should mention that I made an actually really relevant mark on constructed formats with this block. So it's December 2001. It's the Friday, it's the trial day before Grand Prix Sendai. The format's extended, and I'm talking with fellow American Mike Long. I just missed top 8 of my trial with Miracle Grow, a new deck designed by Alan Comer that ran Winter Orb, Quirion Dryad, and a host of Merfolk. Anyway, I enjoyed running the deck of the trial, but I wanted to run the deck I practiced more, Turboland, in the main event. Mike Long wanted to know what I, as a Japanese resident, thought about the metagame. I told him that Necropotence and Illusions of Grandeur Donate were going to be dominant decks. I thought Miracle Grow was well positioned. I wanted to run the deck I had tested a lot more, however. Long was intrigued by the new set, and he hadn't had any time to look at it, so he kept grilling me for ideas for substitute creatures. He did not like the fish. I had a few ideas. So Miracle Grow had so many cantrips in order to grow Quirion Dryad, and free counter magic, so it was pretty easy to get Threshold. So, how about Werebear? And you know what? If you have lots of cards in your hand that don't matter when you swing for lethal, why not play Wild Mongrel? He slips under Winter Orb handily. Anyway, Long added Waterfront Bouncer to the deck, and he took it all the way to the top 4. I will take credit for adding Wild Mongrel into Miracle Grow, and that was a mistake. But I'm also going to take credit for Werebear. Werebear was a staple in lots and lots of Miracle Grow decks. When I saw, in the following weeks, the dozens of lists that also ran Wild Mongrel, I felt pretty lousy, because that was a mistake that other people replicated. Anyway, I loaned Long almost all the cards for that deck, and later on he repaid me for my assistance with a sweet deal on an Ancestral recall. Just to show you, I mean, if you look at those dog-eared corners, the horrible whiting, the mess on the back, and the front's not exactly the prettiest either, but it is sleeve playable, and it's an Ancestral recall for $90, and that is a friggin' deal. So, I don't care what other people say about Mike Long. I'm happy I had this relationship with him. Long story short, Werebear is one of the best Threshold creatures and is almost always useful at all stages of the game. While Mongrel's color shifting was surprisingly relevant against black removal, and its discardability was a very critical element of a key block constructed deck that we'll discuss in depth next show when we get to Torment. These two are commons and easy to get, so I'd say run out and get them for your cubes. Vampiric Dragon was one of the most popular casual cards out there, even if it was nigh impossible to get into play into tournaments. Adding direct damage and growing bigger is a Timmy's dream come true. If you're trying to teach a younger player the game with a black-red deck, maybe use this as the top of your curve when you're giving them a deck to start playing with, because it feels good. If you're looking for the closest analog to the Joker in Magic, Braid's Cabal Minion fits the bill. She forces everyone to make horrible sacrifices, all while having this horrible grin. There is something wrong with this woman. Now, this card is notoriously unfun, to the point of it sitting on the commander list of banned generals for an incredibly long time. So unless you've got some kind of savant plan in mind, this is the nastiest kind of insanity out there. Use great forethought before calling up Braids, but if the plan is right, maybe do it. The Mirari was supposed to be the linchpin this block was based on. It was made of the purest unobtainium. smelted with fortifying MacGuffinite, and might have made some cameos in heavy metal. And yeah, it does some seriously cool things, copying any spell you play for just 3 mana. A later spell in the block gave players the mana to exploit the Mirari to its fullest, but we'll talk about that card when we get to Judgment. Roar of the Worm was a ridiculous token producer. This was the reason that you wanted to play Wild Mongrel when it was just Odyssey, because you could discard a Roar to it and sneak out a 6/6 token for 4 mana. This is one of the reasons why you had to be playing with Ether Burst if you were playing blue. And by the way, check out this really cool exclusive Japanese token. See, Worm 6/6. Really nicely painted. Oh, yeah, I busted this out a couple times when I was playing Blue-Green Madness. Iridescent Angel is the first creature in Magic to have protection from all colors, and there are only 3. The only thing to beat it in untouchability without indestructibility happens to be Progenitus. I want a banana this big. This flavor text still sticks with me after a decade. While the rules text makes its upside nearly useless in the format, Gorilla Titan is loved by many and hated by many people without a sense of humor. Screw you guys. This card rocks. Originally, Entomb was intended to get you a flashback spell, but when Reanimator Mages figured out its applications, it quickly became banned and restricted in numerous formats. Time Stretch is valuable because of EDH, and I hate with a passion people taking extra turns in EDH. It is the worst. It is people monopolizing the table. If you want to tick me off, go ahead and be my guest and play this card. Speaking of wacky blue rares, I'm going to happily confess to playing Battle of Wits in Constructed. It was the next big thing. Big. But I didn't play it in this block, however, because the tutoring wasn't up to snuff. When Battle of Wits saw print in 9th edition, available at the same time as Ravnica with its transmute keyword, I was thrilled to play it. I could transmute Brain Spoil to go get Battle of Wits. Or I could transmute Dimir Houseguard to go get Diabolical Tutor, which would go get Battle of Wits. This deck played Esper colors, it had lots of counter magic, bounce, creature kill, card draw, and yeah, battle for the win. But Odyssey is where Battle first saw print. Final verdict. Phew, that was a lot of cards I discussed. So what's the final verdict on Odyssey? In terms of limited play, many matchups were about who could get more threshold guys out, and then who could get to the magic number 7 faster. Now, this was quite novel, but lots of players made mistakes when discarding or sacrificing permanents, which led them to very unpleasant play experiences. The constant checking of graveyards, how many in the yard? Also slowed down play significantly. For those of you who are familiar with Sensei's Divining Top and know how that slows down the format, imagine if there was just a mechanic that would slow down the game just by dint of existing. In Standard, the set fueled only one major aggressive archetype and created a slew of slow-playing control archetypes, and that was a problem for the Standard metagame. You know, I like sets that allow for lots of different archetypes, and while I do like control, Odyssey didn't quite create the diversity. The set was gimmicky on its own, so while there are a ton of neat cards, and it really did transform the limited experience to create one like no other before it, it was an experience that players didn't have before, but I can't say I'm a huge fan of this set. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, strictly average. That'll do it for today. Join us next week on Ancestral Recall as we delve into the blackest set of all time, Torment. Please consider hitting the like button if you enjoyed this show, and subscribe, as doing so will help other YouTube users find this show more easily. Don't forget to go back and check out my past shows if you're new and this is the first time you saw the show. And if you've got any comments, feedback, or things you want to see, let me know and I'll consider adding them. You can follow me on Twitter, find me on Facebook, and perhaps face me on Magic Online. Note that the next show might be slightly delayed due to me playing a crap ton of Born in the Gods Limited on Magic Online, which should be firing very soon. Thanks for watching. This is Eli Kaplan signing off. Good games and good luck. Please don't use the word Shai Halud, or Frank Herbert's estate will sue our asses.